Isabella Hart stepped into the grand ski lodge, the polished wooden floors gleaming under the warm chandelier lights. The faint scent of pine mingled with the aroma of hot cocoa, bringing a momentary sense of peace as she held her rounded belly, feeling the gentle, reassuring movements of her unborn child. 8 months pregnant, she had been looking forward to this winter getaway for months, imagining cozy evenings by the fireplace, laughter echoing through the chalet, and a reprieve from the relentless demands of daily life. She had envisioned this as a time to reconnect with her husband, Adrian West, and to celebrate the impending arrival of their baby with a sense of calm and joy. Adrian, however, seemed miles away even as he stood beside her, adjusting his designer coat and checking his phone for urgent notifications. His handsome face, usually warm and attentive, now carried a distracted, almost distant expression. Each message he received seemed to pull him further from Isabella's world, and every glance he gave was fleeting and impersonal. She tried to engage him in conversation about the lodge, the breathtaking snowy slopes visible through the large glass windows, or even the baby's upcoming arrival, but his responses were curt, distracted, and lacking the affection she had hoped for. Small moments of tension crept in, almost imperceptibly. Adrian avoided eye contact when she brought up plans for the day, brushed off her attempts at shared jokes, and occasionally muttered about pending business deals that seemed to demand his immediate attention. Isabella felt a tight knot of worry form in her chest, a faint but persistent sense that something was amiss. Outside, the sky had begun to darken with thick, gray clouds, a winter storm moving in faster than anyone anticipated. The snow started to fall in heavy flakes, drifting against the windows and creating an eerie sense of isolation around the lodge. Isabella's intuition prickled with unease as she glanced at the approaching storm, realizing that the peaceful retreat she had envisioned might instead become a test of endurance, courage, and emotional resilience as she faced both the cold outside and the growing distance within her marriage. Isabella watched Adrian from the lodge's balcony as he strode toward the ski lifts, the crisp snow crunching under his polished boots. Again, he disappeared into the crowd, leaving her alone to admire the frozen landscape. The chill in the air mirrored the growing frost in their relationship. She had noticed a pattern over the past few days. He spent more time texting, taking mysterious calls, and slipping away under the pretense of business or networking opportunities. Each absence, each distracted glance at his phone, deepened the ache in her chest. Her mind wandered back to previous moments of neglect. She remembered the missed prenatal appointments, the times she had called for reassurance only to be met with indifference, and the broken promises of small gestures that had once made her feel loved. Even at home, before this trip, Adrian had been emotionally absent, prioritizing meetings and rivalries over her comfort and peace of mind. The realization that he seemed more invested in social appearances and professional competition than in her well-being stung sharply. Now, surrounded by the towering pines and falling snow, Isabella felt the lodge's isolation keenly. The romantic getaway she had imagined was overshadowed by anxiety and the creeping sense of vulnerability. Alone in her thoughts, she wrapped her arms around her belly, the baby's gentle movements of bittersweet comfort. The storm outside seemed to echo the turmoil within, a foreshadowing of the challenges and dangers that awaited her in this fragile, tense environment. Amid the bustle of the ski lodge, Leo Carrington moved with quiet confidence, his tailored coat brushing against the polished floors as he exchanged polite nods with other guests. A respected billionaire in his own right, he had come to the lodge for business networking, blending leisure with strategy. Yet, despite the polished exterior and commanding presence, Leo had a keen eye for human emotion, a sensitivity honed from years of observing people in high-stakes situations. It wasn't long before his attention fell on Isabella Hart. Even from a distance, he noticed the subtle signs, the slight furrow in her brow, the way her hands instinctively rested protectively on her belly, and the fleeting glances she cast toward the slopes as if expecting someone who wasn't there. Her poise was undeniable, but beneath it, he sensed unease, a quiet tension that spoke volumes. Unlike others, he could see that she was not merely distracted or tired. There was a deeper vulnerability, a weight on her shoulders that demanded careful observation. While Adrian remained preoccupied, absorbed in his phone and meetings, Leo found himself quietly admiring Isabella's strength. There was something magnetic in the way she carried herself despite her obvious discomfort and the growing anxiety of late pregnancy. His instincts told him that she might face danger if left unattended, and he made a mental note to keep an eye on her. Little did either of them know, this awareness and his attentiveness would soon place him in a pivotal position, ready to act when an unexpected avalanche threatened Isabella's life, transforming him from observer to rescuer. The wind outside howled with a ferocity that seemed almost alive, shaking the lodge's windows and rattling the doors. Isabella's heart pressed herself against the thick glass, her breath shallow, the chill of the storm creeping even through the layers of her clothing. Then came the terrifying roar, a cascade of snow and ice crashing down the mountainside. The avalanche struck suddenly, blocking the paths to the lodge, isolating her from the outside world. Panic tightened around her chest as she realized that escape was impossible. The warmth of the cozy lodge was gone, replaced by a stark awareness of danger and isolation. Her pregnancy made every movement heavier, more laborious, and the adrenaline coursing through her veins only intensified the strain on her body. She clutched her belly instinctively, whispering soothing words to the baby, trying to manage both her fear and the physical burden of carrying a child in such perilous conditions. The storm's fury drowned out any hope of reaching Adrian. His absence now felt like a tangible, suffocating weight. She tried calling him repeatedly, but the phone rang unanswered, the lines severed by circumstance, or perhaps negligence. Time stretched unbearably as the snow piled higher, and the sense of being utterly alone deepened, forcing her to confront the fragility of her situation. Meanwhile, Leo Carrington, attuned to both the storm and Isabella's vulnerability, noticed the peril from his vantage point. He assessed the lodge's location, the snow's movement, and the danger it posed. Without hesitation, he braved the swirling wind and treacherous terrain, navigating carefully yet urgently to reach her. When he arrived, snow clinging to his coat and boots, he immediately wrapped a warm blanket around her shoulders, shielding her from the cutting wind, and offered reassuring words that steadied her trembling body. Isabella's fear began to mingle with relief and gratitude, her heart pounding in recognition of the rare kindness and strength before her. Amid the chaos, an unspoken bond began to form, rooted in trust, safety, and the intensity of shared life-threatening circumstances. For Isabella, this moment became more than survival, it was the first spark of hope amid betrayal and danger. Isabella sat wrapped in the thick blanket Leo had draped around her, her body still trembling from the cold and adrenaline. As her breaths began to steady, her mind replayed the events that had brought her here, the sudden avalanche, the howling wind, the terrifying isolation, and, most painfully, Adrian's absence. She realized with a sting of clarity how little he had truly considered her safety, how his priorities had always leaned toward ambition, rivalries, and fleeting indulgences rather than the well-being of his pregnant wife. The betrayal cut deep, mingling with the residual fear of the night's events, leaving her heart heavy and her trust shattered. In stark contrast, Leo's presence was a steadying force. He had risked the treacherous terrain, battled the storm, and come to her aid without hesitation. Every gesture, from offering warmth to guiding her through the snow-laden lodge, reflected genuine concern rather than obligation or convenience. Isabella's emotions conflicted wildly, anger at Adrian, relief at surviving the storm, and a profound gratitude for Leo's selflessness. She realized that while one man had abandoned her in a moment of peril, another had risked his own safety to ensure hers and the baby's survival. As she reflected, tears threatened to spill over, a mixture of sorrow, relief, and awakening clarity. The emotional tension was palpable, her heart caught between the sting of betrayal and the unexpected comfort of compassion. This night forced Isabella to confront the truth. She could no longer depend on Adrian's promises, but she could recognize and cherish the rare, authentic care Leo offered. Amid the chaos and danger, the contrast between selfishness and selflessness crystallized, shaping her understanding of loyalty, protection, and the kind of support she deserved. The wail of sirens pierced through the howling wind as emergency responders finally navigated the snow-laden roads to reach the lodge. Isabella, still wrapped tightly in the warm blankets Leo had provided, felt a surge of relief mixed with lingering anxiety. Every step toward the ambulance reminded her of how precarious her situation had been, the freezing temperatures, the avalanche's unpredictable force, and the harsh reality of being 8 months pregnant and alone. Her body ached, but the baby inside moved gently, a reassuring sign that they had survived the ordeal. Leo remained close at every moment, guiding her carefully into the ambulance, his presence calm and steady. He adjusted her seat, offered comforting words, and held her hand as paramedics checked vital signs and secured her for transport. Isabella felt a strange mixture of emotions, fear for her and her child's health, gratitude for Leo's unwavering support, and a dawning recognition of the stark contrast between his attentiveness and Adrian's abandonment. Each glance from him conveyed concern, without judgment or expectation, pure care focused entirely on her safety. At the hospital, the medical team immediately moved to monitor her condition. The doctors checked her blood pressure, examined for signs of hypothermia, and assessed the baby's heartbeat, which thumped steadily and reassuringly. The close call of the Avalanche and prolonged exposure to freezing temperatures underscored the seriousness of the night, highlighting just how vulnerable Isabella had been. Leo remained a constant presence, quietly communicating with the staff, ensuring she had comfort, and offering emotional support without overstepping. As Isabella lay back on the hospital bed, the reality of what had occurred began to sink in. She realized that in Leo, she had found a trustworthy protector and emotional anchor, someone who had risked himself for her and the baby's safety, someone whose concern was genuine and immediate. For the first time in weeks, she felt a fragile sense of security amidst the chaos, a feeling she had not experienced in her marriage for far too long. Adrian West finally arrived at the hospital, snow still clinging to his coat, his breath visible in the icy air. Panic surged through him as he pushed past the hospital doors, scanning the bustling emergency room for any sign of Isabella. His mind raced, guilt pressing down like a physical weight, each heartbeat echoing the realization that he had failed her when she needed him most. The avalanche, the freezing temperatures, the terror she must have felt, he had been absent, distracted by trivial business matters and preoccupations that now seemed unbearably insignificant. As he approached the nurse's station, fragments of memory tormented him, missed prenatal appointments, nights she had waited alone for him to return, her whispered concerns dismissed with impatience or excuses. The depth of his neglect, amplified by the life-threatening situation she had endured, made his chest tighten with remorse. He could see, in his mind's eye, her shivering form outside in the snow, alone and vulnerable, and it filled him with a gnawing sense of panic he couldn't ignore. When he finally glimpsed Isabella lying on the hospital bed, cheeks flushed from the ordeal, he was met not with relief, but with the sharp clarity of her anger and disappointment. Her gaze, steady and piercing, reflected disillusionment and quiet strength. She was alive and safe, yes, but it was clear she would no longer tolerate excuses, empty apologies, or half-hearted gestures. In that moment, Adrian understood that Isabella's priorities had shifted. Her trust in the baby's safety came first, far above his presence or pleas for forgiveness. The man who had once been her center of support now confronted the consequences of his absence, realizing that redemption would require more than panic, it would demand accountability, genuine change, and the patient rebuilding of trust. Isabella's eyes met Adrian's as he approached her hospital room, the weight of the past night pressing heavily between them. She didn't flinch, though her heart still raced from the ordeal outside, from the snowstorm, and from the months of emotional neglect that had preceded it. "How could you leave me out there?" she demanded, her voice steady but edged with hurt. "Do you even realize what could have happened?" "What did happen?" The words poured out, each one carrying the anguish, fear, and betrayal she had bottled up for weeks. Adrian's face paled, guilt flooding his features. He swallowed hard, his usual arrogance stripped away by the stark reality of her suffering. I was wrong," he stammered, voice tight with remorse. "I let my selfishness get in the way. I ignored your needs, your safety, and even our child's. I can't undo it, but I am so sorry." He reached out, but Isabella stepped back, the space between them symbolizing the boundaries she now enforced. His apology, though heartfelt, was not enough to erase months of neglect and the trauma of being abandoned in the snow. Leo stood nearby, quietly observing, a calm presence reinforcing her courage. His steady gaze and protective stance reminded Isabella that she was not alone and that she had the right to demand accountability. She took a deep breath, holding firm to her resolve. "Sorry isn't enough," she said. "I need actions, not words. Boundaries will be respected. Anything less, and you'll lose everything you've neglected to value." Adrian nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat, understanding for the first time that genuine change required effort, consistency, and proof, not just remorse. Isabella's strength, bolstered by Leo's support, left no room for empty promises. Isabella lay back against the hospital pillows, the events of the past hours swirling in her mind like the storm outside. The terror of the avalanche, the biting cold, and the helplessness she had felt still clung to her, mingling with the deep, simmering hurt caused by Adrian's absence and disregard. She traced her hand gently over her belly, feeling the life growing within, a new responsibility that demanded clarity and strength. Each memory of neglect, each pang of fear during the snowstorm, reminded her how fragile trust could be and how high the stakes were, not just for herself, but for her unborn child. She considered Adrian's frantic apologies, his acknowledgement of mistakes, and the sincerity in his voice. Yet, years of emotional absence, broken promises, and selfish choices weighed heavily against the possibility of reconciliation. Isabella knew that for her child's sake, and for her own peace of mind, she could not rely solely on words. Boundaries were essential. Any future involvement had to be predicated on consistent action, accountability, and respect. She mentally drafted the conditions that would govern co-parenting or reconciliation: honesty, emotional presence, and no tolerance for manipulation or neglect. Meanwhile, Leo remained a steady presence in her thoughts, his calm, caring support a stark contrast to Adrian's failures. He had risked the storm to ensure her safety and continued to offer guidance and comfort without intrusion. Isabella recognized the rare quality of his attention, a balance of respect, empathy, and genuine concern that allowed her to feel safe without compromising her independence. Slowly, she realized that while her trust in Adrian required time and proof, her cautious reliance on Leo provided immediate reassurance and emotional stability, a lifeline amidst the chaos and uncertainty of recent events. Months had passed since the harrowing night of the avalanche, and Isabella Hart had emerged stronger, more self-reliant, and deeply attuned to her own needs and those of her child. The experience had reshaped her understanding of trust and protection. Every decision she made now prioritized safety, emotional stability, and the well-being of her unborn child, Royal. She navigated motherhood with grace, cautious yet open to the possibility of connection and genuine care. Adrian, though remorseful, remained on the periphery of her life. His absence during the crisis had left an indelible mark, and Isabella's boundaries ensured that reconciliation would not come at the expense of her autonomy or her child's security. His gestures of regret were acknowledged, but they were met with measured patience rather than immediate forgiveness. She had learned that words alone could not repair broken trust. Consistency, accountability, and genuine effort were required. Leo's continued presence provided a reassuring anchor. His unwavering support, calm guidance, and respectful attention offered Isabella a model of genuine care and reliability. While she maintained her independence, she allowed herself to lean on him when necessary, appreciating the balance between trust and self-preservation. His role highlighted that support did not have to come with conditions or hidden agendas. It could simply be steady, honest, and protective. The winter storm that had once threatened her life had become a catalyst for profound transformation. Isabella's survival was not just physical but emotional. Her resilience and strength had been tested and proven. As she gazed at Royal, safe and thriving, she embraced a future defined by cautious hope, redemption, and a life built on trust, resilience, and the wisdom born from adversity. Her story concluded not with despair, but with the quiet triumph of perseverance, self-preservation, and the possibility of authentic love.